Pirates' wine and the gods' sneaky tricks. Hey guys! Tonight we plunge into a world where the salty sea spray mingles with the scent of crushed grapes, where pirates, yes, those swashbuckling troublemakers, cross paths with gods who aren't just throwing lightning bolts, but also pulling off some seriously sneaky transformation tricks. You find yourself on a rickety wooden ship, the sun dipping low over the Aegean, the waves slapping the hull as you hear rumors of pirates daring enough to kidnap a god. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this story without feeling a little woozy from all the wine-wild antics and divine comeuppances coming your way. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm always curious where in the world we're sailing from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this: a bunch of pirates, rough and tumble seafarers, known more for plundering than for hospitality, suddenly find themselves face to face with a god, not just any god, but Dionysus, the wild wine-loving trickster of Olympus. Historically, pirates were a serious threat to ancient Greek shipping lanes, but this myth takes that idea to a whole new level, mixing fact with fantasy. Scholars still debate whether stories like this reflect actual pirate encounters or are just allegories for nature's unpredictability and human folly. These pirates aren't just after treasure. They want to capture Dionysus himself, perhaps mistaking him for a wealthy mortal, or simply daring to challenge the divine. Their boldness sets off a chain reaction of chaos. But Dionysus, with his intoxicating wine and uncanny ability to change form, has a few surprises up his sleeve. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some versions of the myth say that Dionysus turned the pirates into dolphins. Dolphins? Imagine getting a pirate's grimace swapped for a sleek, smiling snout. It's like the ultimate swab-the-deck punishment with a splash of irony. As you settle deeper into this tale, keep in mind the ongoing scholarly debate. Are these myths just fanciful stories, or did they capture real tensions between seafarers and religious beliefs? The lines blur, and that's part of the fun, because nothing says bedtime like a splash of ancient divine mischief and a cork popped on some mythical wine. Dionysus arrives, wine and madness. You're drifting now from the salty sea air to the intoxicating scent of crushed grapes and wild vines because Dionysus has arrived. And trust me, things get way more interesting from here. This isn't your usual god, lounging on Mount Olympus, sipping ambrosia, and critiquing mortals from afar. No, Dionysus is the god of wine madness and ecstatic frenzy, and his entrance into any scene is like a cosmic party crashing into a very serious symposium, except with way more dancing and possibly some questionable behavior that would make even a modern-day festival look tame. Imagine Dionysus walking into your local tavern, crowned with ivy, and holding a thyrsus, a staff, wrapped in ivy, and topped with a pine cone, while a chorus of satyrs and maenads, his wild followers, stomp and howl in a chaotic parade of celebration. The air thickens with the smell of sweet wine, and you can almost feel the buzz creeping up your spine. Wine in ancient Greece wasn't just a drink, it was a social revolution. It loosened tongues, broke down social barriers, and stirred the soul toward both creativity and madness. Here's a historical fact that might surprise you. The cultivation of grapes and production of wine was central to Greek society from as early as 1500 BCE, but Dionysus's cult popularized the idea of wine as a divine gift that could connect mortals to the gods or drive them into ecstatic madness. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was originally a foreign god adopted by the Greeks or a homegrown deity symbolizing nature's wild side. Either way, his arrival always means things will get a little out of control. Now, the quirky part, Dionysus, wasn't just about parties and drunkenness. Some ancient followers believed his wine could induce prophetic visions or even healing, making him a god of both pleasure and spiritual revelation. So the next time you sip a glass, think of the dual nature of this liquid joy and potential chaos hand in hand. As you imagine the pirates clashing with Dionysus's world, remember the sensory swirl, the wild music, the sharp tang of fermented grapes, and the way reality seems to bend under the god's influence. It's a perfect storm of sensory overload that leaves everyone wondering who's really in charge. And just to spice things up, here's a fun little debate for you. Some scholars suggest Dionysus's cult rituals were originally secret rites linked to fertility and rebirth, while others see them as anarchic celebrations meant to upend social order. Either way, his arrival guarantees a shakeup, and those pirates are about to learn just how wild wine-fueled madness can get. The transformation trick begins. You're right there with Dionysus now, and things are starting to get surreal, like the kind of dream where your surroundings shift shape just as you try to focus. Because Dionysus isn't just a god who throws wild parties. He's a master of transformation, twisting reality in ways that leave everyone mortal and immortal alike guessing what's real. His shape-shifting isn't just flashy magic, it's a survival tactic, a way to slip through danger, and a symbol of his fluid, unpredictable nature. Picture this: the pirates have snared Dionysus, thinking they've caught a rich captive, maybe planning to ransom him or plunder his supposed treasures. But Dionysus, cool as a cucumber, soaked in grape juice, starts shifting his form. One moment, he's a handsome young man with a mischievous smile. The next, a lion roaring with divine fury. Then a serpent slithering silently through the ropes. This isn't just a stunt. It's a message you can't trap what flows like wine. A mainstream historical fact you can savor here is that shape-shifting was a common motif in Greek myths used by gods and heroes alike, symbolizing change, disguise, or escape. Hermes, Proteus, and Zeus himself all dabbled in it. But Dionysus's transformations tend to focus on animals associated with wildness, lions, bulls, snakes, connecting him to nature's untamed forces. Now for a quirky detail, some versions say Dionysus turned the pirates' ship itself into a vine-covered jungle, making the deck sprout grapevines that wound around masts and oars. Imagine trying to row through a forest that suddenly grew beneath your feet. Talk about a nightmare commute. Historians still argue whether these transformation tales were metaphors for real natural phenomena sailors observed, like sudden storms or strange sea creatures, or purely mythic exaggerations meant to convey Dionysus's power over the natural world. Either way, the transformations mess with perception, a hallmark of Dionysian influence. And you can't ignore the psychological twist here. The pirates, usually confident and brutal, suddenly find themselves helpless against a god who won't stay put in any form. It's like trying to catch smoke or chase a shadow, and you're left wondering who's really the predator. There's also a symbolic layer Wine itself changes the drinker, just like Dionysus changes shapes. This shape-shifting mirrors intoxication's ability to warp reality, making the pirate's fate both literal and metaphorical. So as you drift in this sea of shifting forms, keep your eyes peeled, because with Dionysus, nothing is as it seems, and every transformation is a trick with a lesson tucked inside. Pirate's bold mistake. You watch as those pirates, all swagger and misplaced confidence, make what might be the single worst decision in their seafaring careers, capturing Dionysus. Imagine them gruff and rough, thinking they're about to snatch a wealthy traveler or a helpless prisoner, only to realize a god is firmly in their grip. It's like grabbing a tiger by the tail and hoping it purrs. Spoiler, it doesn't. The pirate's boldness is almost comical. Maybe a little too much wine had loosened their judgment. Their plan is simple: tie him up, sail off with their prize, and figure out what ransom they can demand. But Dionysus, ever the trickster, isn't the kind of captive you just chain up and stow below deck. He's got plans that turn their confidence into chaos. Here's a mainstream historical fact to chew on: pirates in ancient Greece were real dangerous figures who disrupted trade and travel, sometimes even inspiring fear-based stories to warn sailors. Yet unlike modern images of pirates, they were often more brutal and pragmatic than romantic swashbucklers. The myth about Dionysus and the pirates probably grew from combining these real threats with divine retribution tales. A quirky detail: according to some myths, when Dionysus was captured, he caused the wine barrels on the pirate ship to spontaneously ferment, turning even the fresh water supplies into heady wine. Imagine the confusion on that ship, sailors trying to quench their thirst and ending up even more intoxicated. Talk about drinking yourself into trouble. Historians still argue whether the pirate's story is a metaphor for humanity's attempts to control the uncontrollable, whether through seizing divine power or through the intoxicating effects of wine. Either way, it's a vivid example of hubris, the ancient Greek idea that overstepping your bounds invites disaster. And here comes the classic Dionysian twist. The pirates don't just get punished, they become part of the divine spectacle. Their transformation, their punishment, even their fate is a kind of twisted entertainment for the gods, both terrifying and oddly humorous. You can almost hear the crack of laughter echoing across the waves as Dionysus turns the tables on the hapless pirates, proving once again that messing with a god of wine and madness is a losing game. The god's punishment unleashed. So here you are, watching the inevitable chaos unfold as Dionysus unleashes his divine punishment on the pirates. And trust me, it's far from your typical lightning bolt and instant barbecue scenario. Instead, the god's revenge is as wild and unpredictable as the wine he commands, blending horror humor and a dash of mythological surrealism that's just the right amount of bizarre for a bedtime story. First, the pirates find themselves writhing in confusion as the ship seems to come alive. Vines twist up the masts and curl around the oars like playful serpents. Grapes burst, splattering juice that stains the deck deep purple. The air thickens with the heavy, sweet smell of fermenting wine, a scent that would be heavenly if it weren't so ominous. For these seafarers, the intoxicating power of Dionysus is no party. It's a trap tightening around their very souls. Then the transformation begins. The pirates, once fierce and cocky, turn into dolphins leaping helplessly into the sea. Imagine that a bunch of hardened criminals sentenced to a life of aquatic flips and clicks. It's a fate that blends poetic justice with the mythical dolphins were often seen as friendly, intelligent creatures in Greek lore, so turning men who disrespected a god into such beings is an ironic punishment wrapped in mercy. Here's a mainstream historical fact to ponder: the dolphin transformation motif wasn't unique to this story, but appeared across various ancient myths as a form of divine mercy or escape. Some historians believe it symbolized a bridge between human mortality and divine favor, suggesting that even sinners could find redemption through metamorphosis. Now, the quirky side: some versions claim that the pirates still retained human-like intelligence, underwater eternally cursed to witness the freedom they once had, but never reclaim it. It's like being trapped at the world's wildest party, but you can only watch through a glass wall. Talk about eternal FOMO. Scholars still argue whether these punishments reflect actual ancient Greek beliefs about the afterlife, or if they're metaphorical warnings about respecting the gods and nature's forces. Either way, it's clear that Dionysus's vengeance was as theatrical as it was effective. And let's not forget the atmosphere, the eerie silence of the sea, punctuated by the strange clicks and whistles of the transformed pirates, a haunting echo of human folly caught forever in divine retribution. You can almost feel the salty spray and hear the faint splash as the pirates dive into their new lives. So while the pirates might have thought they could outwit a god, Dionysus shows that wine madness and transformation are powers no mortal should ever underestimate. Pirates' bold mistake. You watch as those pirates, full of swagger and reckless confidence, make what might be the single worst decision in their entire seafaring careers, capturing Dionysus. Imagine them rough-gruff and sure of their prize, thinking they've nabbed a wealthy traveler or an easy ransom target. But instead, they've caught a god one who's far from helpless. It's like grabbing a tiger by the tail and hoping it purrs. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Their plan seems simple. They rope him down, stow him below deck, and imagine the riches they'll demand for their captive. But Dionysus, ever the trickster, has other ideas. The moment they think they've got the upper hand, reality starts to shift because Dionysus is no ordinary prisoner. Here's a historical fact to chew on: pirates in ancient Greece were indeed a formidable menace, disrupting trade routes and terrorizing coastal towns. Unlike the romanticized pirates of later centuries, these guys were brutal and pragmatic, more interested in quick profit than flashy duels. The myth of Dionysus and the pirates likely grew from real seafaring dangers mixed with divine warnings. Now, the quirky part: some myths say Dionysus magically turns the fresh water aboard the ship into wine. Imagine the confusion as the thirsty pirates try to drink and find their supply transformed into intoxicating wine, both a blessing and a curse, because now they're drinking themselves into a stupor right before divine punishment kicks in. Scholars still argue whether the pirates' story is a metaphor for humanity's futile attempts to control forces beyond its reach, like divine power or the chaos unleashed by wine-induced madness. Regardless, it's a prime example of hubris, the Greek concept of overstepping one's bounds and inviting disaster. And here's the classic Dionysian twist: the pirates don't just get punished, they become part of the god's spectacle. Their fate is as theatrical as it is terrifying, a divine lesson with a side of cosmic humor. You can almost hear the god's laughter echoing across the waves as Dionysus turns the tables, proving once again that messing with a god of wine and madness never ends well. Pirates' bold mistake. You're watching the pirates now, the usual rough and tumble sea dogs, full of swagger and bravado, making what might be the single worst call in their entire roguish careers. They decide to capture Dionysus. Picture it, these guys, rough as driftwood and twice as sharp, thinking they've nabbed some rich traveler ripe for ransom, only to realize they've actually caught a god. That's like grabbing a thundercloud and expecting it to behave like a fluffy pillow. Spoiler, it does not end well. The plan is simple, or so they think. Rope the mysterious young man up, stow him below deck, and sail away with their prize. But Dionysus, the master of chaos and transformation, is not your average captive. While they're celebrating prematurely, he's already weaving his wild magic, ready to turn their world upside down. A historical nugget to keep in mind: ancient Greek pirates were real threats on the Mediterranean, disrupting trade and spreading fear, but their mythological portrayals often blend fact with divine retribution. These stories served as cautionary tales, warning mortals about the dangers of arrogance and disrespect toward the gods. Here's a quirky detail to sip on some versions. Say Dionysus caused the ship's fresh water to turn into wine right under the pirates' noses. Imagine the bewilderment: thirsty pirates trying to drink seawater, then suddenly finding themselves swimming in intoxicating grape juice. Not exactly the hydration you were hoping for on a long voyage. Historians still debate whether the tale symbolizes humanity's futile attempts to control the uncontrollable, be it the divine or the intoxicating power of wine. Either way, it's a perfect example of hubris, the Greek idea that overreaching invites disaster. And of course, Dionysus doesn't just punish the pirates, he makes them part of his divine spectacle. Their fate is both a warning and a theatrical performance, reminding everyone that messing with a god of wine and madness is a gamble with very high stakes. You can almost hear the god's sly laughter echoing over the waves as the pirates' bold mistake seals their doom in the most theatrical way possible. Pirates' bold mistake. You're right there on the deck with the pirates, rough, cocky, and thinking they've hit the jackpot by capturing this handsome stranger who's really Dionysus in disguise. It's their classic hold my drink moment, except the drink is divine wrath waiting to be unleashed. They tie him up, laughing at their own cleverness, convinced that ransom money or treasure lies just over the horizon. But here's the kicker: capturing a god is less easy payday and more epic disaster in the making. Historically speaking, pirates in the ancient Greek world were a genuine menace, striking fear into merchants and sailors alike. Their notoriety was so widespread that many myths evolved around their exploits, blending harsh reality with divine morality tales. Scholars still argue whether the story of Dionysus and the pirates was a real reflection of seafaring dangers or a moral warning wrapped in myth. Now here's a quirky twist. Dionysus supposedly made the ship's water supply turn into wine. For the pirates, this was not the festive bonus they'd hoped for. Imagine their confusion trying to quench thirst with ever more intoxicating liquids, their clear-headedness slipping away with every gulp. It's like accidentally hitting shuffle on your brain's playlist and getting a non-stop mix of chaos and bad decisions. The core of this tale is classic hubris Greek, for you're way too cocky and that's going to bite you. These pirates didn't just overestimate their strength, they underestimated divine power and the unpredictable nature of Dionysus himself. Their mistake wasn't just capturing him, it was failing to recognize who or what they had, and the gods' response. Oh, it's not just punishment, it's a theatrical spectacle. Dionysus turns the tables, making their fate a lasting warning and an entertaining divine performance. You can almost hear his laughter mixing with the crashing waves, a reminder that with gods like this, the party's just getting started, and it's one you don't want to miss unless you're the unlucky guest of honor. Pirate's bold mistake. You're standing there on the swaying deck of a sun-warmed ship, the smell of salt and tar in your nose, surrounded by a crew of scruffy, sunburned pirates who are very proud of themselves. They've just captured what looks like an ordinary, albeit suspiciously radiant young man. Maybe they think he's some soft, wealthy noble, or maybe just a pretty boy with delicate hands who wandered too far from the shoreline. Either way, they're patting themselves on the back like they've just netted Poseidon's private wine merchant. Except you know what they don't. This isn't some clueless aristocrat. It's Dionysus, the god of wine madness, theater, and transformation, a combination that frankly sounds like the worst possible hostage. But the pirates, they don't know that yet. They're too busy tying him up and debating whether to ransom him or sell him. Big mistake. Huge. Here's your historical bite. Piracy was a real and dangerous occupation in the ancient Greek world. These weren't just lawless rogues, they were often organized, aggressive, and embedded in coastal economies. Entire city-states sometimes colluded with pirate bands. But myths like this one reflect the cultural unease around their chaotic presence, stories meant to remind people that even the lawless aren't above divine justice. Now here's your quirky, why does this even exist detail. In one version of the myth, Dionysus doesn't just sit quietly while tied up. No, he smiles serenely and lets the pirates start rowing out to sea. Then mid-journey, their ship starts to sprout. Vines creep from the baseboards, blooming with full clusters of grapes. Ivy twists up the mast like it's auditioning for a garden show. It's less kidnapping and more accidental vineyard cruise. As the foliage thickens and the sweet scent of fermenting grapes overwhelms the air, the pirates begin to freak out. One tries to slice through a vine, only to find his blade stuck in living wood. Another turns toward their captive and finds not a boy, but a lion, where Dionysus had been staring at him with ancient golden eyes. This is where things get interesting. Scholars still argue whether these divine punishments were symbolic of actual psychological states, like hallucinations during sunstroke or wine-fueled paranoia. Was the god real, or were the pirates just too drunk and too far from shore? One pirate shouts to abandon ship. Another swears he hears flute music from the sails. You clinging to the railing watch as chaos blooms in every direction. And through it all, Dionysus, now back in human form, laughs softly like someone who just pulled off the ultimate prank at a very, very high price. Because here's the thing, Dionysus doesn't punish like other gods. There are no lightning bolts or giant hammers, no earthquakes or rivers of fire. His justice is stranger. It's beautiful and terrifying and completely beyond your control. He doesn't just hurt you, he changes the rules of the game. The pirates thought they'd made a bold move. What they really did was step into a god's performance, and they're about to find out what role he's written for them. The god's punishment unleashed. The transformation doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slow and elegant, like a dancer weaving through shadows. One moment, the pirates are shouting and stumbling across the grape-slick deck blades, out trying to figure out if they've been drugged or cursed. The next, the mast begins to groan, not from wind but from twisting vines that push up through the wood like they've been growing there for centuries. The sails tear as ivy winds around them, and a sweet, sickly smell of overripe grapes and fermented juice thickens the air. It's not a ship anymore. It's a floating hallucination, and you're in the middle of it. Some pirates drop their weapons, falling to their knees in terror or awe. One guy tries to jump overboard, but the sea below is teeming with dolphins, not normal ones either. These ones are watching, waiting. There's an intelligence behind those black, glassy eyes, like they know what's coming, like maybe they were once something else. Here's your mainstream historical nugget in ancient Greek art and myth. Dolphins were often considered lucky or even sacred symbols of divine intervention. They show up in rescue stories and were thought to guide lost sailors home. So when Dionysus starts turning pirates into dolphins, it's not random. It's symbolic. He's not just punishing them, he's reshaping them into something that can still serve a purpose. They're not dead, just rebranded, a quirky aside. In some versions of the myth, the god doesn't even speak. He just smiles and lets the ship do the talking. The transformation is a silent performance, a slow-motion tragedy. One of the pirates screams as his legs fuse and reshape his bones, cracking like dry branches. His shouts stretch into chirps and clicks. Another clutches the rigging as his hands melt into flippers. It's grotesque, but weirdly beautiful, like a nature documentary narrated by someone who's had just enough wine to think it's all kind of funny. Historians still argue whether this part of the myth was ever meant to be literal. Was it an allegory for redemption, or a poetic spin on mariners lost at sea? Some believe it's a fable about the perils of greed. Others say it's a metaphor for the unpredictable wildness of nature, especially the kind that comes with wine madness and gods who don't believe in tidy endings. But you can't deny the imagery. The transformation is theatrical, like a live stage show with a watery finale. As the last of the pirates disappear into the waves, you notice the ship itself is changing. The wood softens. The nails pull themselves loose. The hull sighs and splits not violently, but almost peacefully, like it's been waiting for this. You're the only one left on board, now standing in the ruins of a floating vineyard, surrounded by the sea and silence. And Dionysus, he's not there anymore. He vanished the moment the last pirate dove into the sea. Or maybe he never was there. Maybe the whole thing was a test or a story. Maybe you're part of it now. Then from below the surface, a pod of dolphins leaps, cutting through the waves in perfect arcs. They click and whistle in a rhythm that almost sounds like laughter. You realize the punishment wasn't about pain, it was about change. Dionysus doesn't destroy, he transforms, and in a way that's more terrifying. Because who you are now might not be who you were 5 minutes ago, or 5 sentences ago. So next time you see a dolphin dancing alongside your boat, remember, it might just be a pirate, cursed with flippers and a front row seat to the strangest justice system in mythology. Landfall and local panic. Eventually you drift toward shore, though shore might be generous. It's more like the edge of a goat-infested sunburned hillside, where the air smells like thyme and nervous sheep. Your vine-wrapped ship, or what's left of it, nudges gently against the rocks. The dolphins, now distant, seem to vanish one by one beneath the water. You're left in eerie quiet, standing ankle-deep in grape juice and divine mystery. You disembark maybe a little woozy. Was it the wine fumes or the god's aura? Hard to say. The beach is empty, but word spreads fast in the ancient world, and by the time you stagger into the nearby village, barefoot and smelling like a cellar, the locals are already whispering. People peek from behind olive trees, clutching their children like you're contagious with holy chaos. Here's a historical fact to anchor you. In ancient Greece, coastal towns were often tight-knit, suspicious of strangers, and deeply superstitious. They believed gods could walk among them in human form, especially gods like Dionysus, who was notorious for surprise appearances and equally surprise consequences. One goat herder claims he saw a lion on the beach that vanished into a fog of ivy. Another swears a flute played itself near the waves. And now here you are, looking suspiciously like a dazed prophet or someone who really overdid it at a wine festival. Either way, it doesn't take long before people assume the gods are involved. The town priest, bald sun-scorched and perpetually annoyed, demands answers. You try to explain about the pirates, the vines, the dolphins. He doesn't look convinced. Then he notices a grapevine slowly coiling out of your tunic sleeve, and he drops his staff. The villagers murmur. Someone throws flower petals. A child asks if you're married to Zeus. Here's a quirky fringe detail in some local legends. People who'd been touched by Dionysus were seen as both blessed and deeply unstable. One record claims that a man once tried to live in a wine barrel to stay closer to the divine mood. He was eventually relocated to a nice, quiet cave, and now all attention turns to the mountain just beyond the village, rugged, wind-whipped, and ominously quiet. Mount Nisa, the rumored childhood playground of Dionysus himself. The villagers decide you should go there, not in a helpful, encouraging way, more in a "you clearly brought this chaos, now please take it back" kind of way. Classic crowd logic. Scholars still argue whether this story arc reflects the ancient Greek tension between order and ecstatic experience. Dionysus wasn't just a party god. He symbolized disruption, the temporary collapse of normality. People feared and worshipped him in equal measure. So now, you're being walked okay, lightly shoved up a winding path, with a few cheese wheels and a suspiciously moldy cloak for supplies. The villagers hope you'll appease the god. You're hoping for fewer vine attacks. It's unclear who's more nervous. The wind picks up as you climb. From behind you can still hear the village one person chanting a half-remembered hymn, another arguing about whether it's Dionysus or Dionysus. You'd correct them, but you're too busy wondering what's waiting for you at the top of the mountain. Because here's the thing about Dionysus. He never shows up when or how you expect. He doesn't knock. He doesn't RSVP. And when he arrives, Reality usually bends in ways that can't be untangled later. You climb step by step into the thinning air and thickening myth. Above the clouds, ripple like liquid silk, and somewhere up there, maybe behind that next ridge, someone is laughing. Or is it flute music again? The mountain retreat. You keep climbing feet, slipping on gravel hands, brushing against scratchy bushes that smell like sun and sap and goat droppings. The trail winds like it's unsure where it's going, zigzagging past groves of cypress and dry pine. Occasionally, a goat stares at you with what you're pretty sure is judgment. Even the animals seem to know you're out of your element. The higher you go, the quieter it gets. The wind thins the insects' hush, and your breath gets louder in your ears. It feels like the mountain's listening, like it's waiting. You reach a small plateau and pause, looking out across the valley. From here, the coastline curves in a sleepy crescent. The sea is glittering lazily, like it has no idea what just happened to the pirates. Or maybe it knows and is deliberately acting casual. Here's your historical touchstone in many ancient Greek myths. Sacred mountains weren't just physical places, they were thresholds between the human world and the divine. Mount Nisa, in particular, is a mystery. No one agrees where it actually is. Some scholars think it was in Thrace, others vote for Lydia. A few even claim it was in India. Historians still argue whether Nisa was a real location or a metaphor for the wild, ungoverned corners of the world, places where normal rules don't apply and gods play hide and seek with reality. Now here's something quirky. Some ancient sources said the slopes of Nisa were covered in self-fermenting grapes, just hanging off the vine, already wine. No stomping necessary. Nature, in Dionysian territory, knows how to cut out the middleman. As you explore, the trees get stranger. Ivy chokes some of them, but instead of looking sickly, they shimmer like they've been painted with honey. There's fruit you don't recognize, blossoms that open and close as you walk by. You don't even trust the air anymore. It smells too sweet, too thick, like something that might slip into your lungs and start whispering. You find a half-collapsed stone structure, maybe a shrine, maybe an old party spot. Votive offerings are scattered everywhere, little wine cups, broken masks, and bones wrapped in faded ribbons. Someone's been here before, or is still here. It's hard to tell. And then out of nowhere, a sound, not a voice, a flute. It's distant, but you feel it more than hear it high and circling, like a dragonfly's wing beat. It makes your hair rise and your thoughts stumble. You follow it, not really knowing why. Your feet know before your brain catches up. Deeper into the woods, you go brushing past vines that part just enough for you. You catch flashes of movement, bare feet, a flick of cloth, maybe antlers, but every time you look directly, it's gone. It's like the mountain is watching you through 100 pairs of borrowed eyes. And finally, there he is, Dionysus, not in golden robes, not on a throne, just standing barefoot in the moss skin, glowing faintly like moonlight on water. His eyes are the color of aged wine and too calm to be human. He doesn't say anything at first. He just watches you. Then he smiles, and all at once, you feel the entire weight of the sea, the vines, the transformation, the laughter. It all folds inward, like a wave, drawing back. You don't fall. You simply kneel as if your body recognizes something your mind hasn't yet caught up to. This moment, quiet, unreal, isn't punishment, it's invitation. Dionysus steps forward and places a hand on your shoulder. No lightning, no fanfare, just a warmth that sinks into your bones and rearranges something there. This god doesn't demand worship. He doesn't need temples or golden idols. He needs presence, willingness, a little looseness around the edges. Scholars still argue whether Dionysus was ever truly accepted into Olympus, or if he remained a god of the margins, the forest, the nighttime festivals. But right now, you understand something they don't. His domain isn't just wine or madness. It's transformation. Not the kind you choose, but the kind that chooses you. You exhale. The mountain exhales back, and somewhere far below, the villagers stop chanting. The wind shifts, and the world quietly changes, one vine at a time. Mad women of the hills, you don't get to rest long. Dionysus, true to form, is already walking away barefoot, casual, totally indifferent to the fact that your legs feel like jelly, and your sense of time has evaporated somewhere between the wine-scented vines and the flute music. You follow him, of course. What else would you do, tell a god? No, he leads you up a narrow trail that winds between tangled trees and boulders that look suspiciously like sleeping animals. You're not even sure if this is still the same mountain. Everything smells like myrrh and lightning. Then you hear them, laughter sharp and bright and just slightly off, and drums. Or is it feet stomping in rhythm? You can't tell. The air buzzes with a different kind of energy, less divine calm, more chaotic festival. You push through a thicket, branches snapping back, like they're annoyed, and stumble into a clearing. And there they are, the Maenads, women wild and radiant, dancing in a circle around a fire that doesn't seem to burn wood so much as burn itself. They wear deerskins and ivy crowns necklaces made of teeth and feathers and things you don't want to identify too closely. Their eyes shine like stars you've never seen before, and their movements are half graceful, half animal. You try not to stare, but it's impossible. This is the kind of spectacle that ancient poets spent whole careers trying and failing to capture. These aren't your average festival goers. They're Dionysus's most devoted followers, and they've unhinged a bit. Here's your historical grounding. Maenads, or Bacchae, were real enough in the Greek imagination to make people nervous. These women represented a departure from the strict social roles of Greek city life. In myth, and sometimes in ritual, they abandoned their homes, left their families, and ran wild in the hills to worship Dionysus. To some, this was liberation. To others, it was terrifying. And now you're in the middle of it. One Maenad brushes past you, her scent equal parts wildflower and sweat. She grins like she knows something you don't. Another offers you a cup made from a hollowed-out pomegranate. You accept because you're not rude. It's warm and sweet and tastes like fruit that learned how to lie. A quirky detail in fringe versions of these myths, the Maenads weren't just dancers and partiers. Some texts describe them pulling trees out of the ground with their bare hands, tearing animals apart and summoning fog thick enough to lose yourself in. But that doesn't seem to be happening tonight. Tonight they just dance, wildly, unapologetically, like the stars above are keeping beat. You glance back at Dionysus. He's sitting now, legs folded, watching his followers, with a look that's equal parts pride and mild amusement, like a director watching his favorite scene play out perfectly. Someone places a crown of ivy on your head, and no one seems to mind that you're an outsider. In fact, they welcome it. Historians still argue whether these rituals were literal or symbolic. Were there truly women who left home to worship the god in the wilderness? Or was it all metaphor for breaking free of the rigid, sobering grip of Greek patriarchy? But when a Maenad takes your hand and spins you into the circle, the debate doesn't matter. You move not because you know the steps, but because the rhythm worms its way into your muscles. The ground thrums beneath your feet. The fire crackles in colors that shouldn't exist. Laughter bursts like fruit from branches. For the first time in what feels like years, you stop thinking. There is no fear here, no time, no rules, just motion, song, shadow, and the deep pulsing truth that sometimes the only way to find yourself is to lose your grip a little, or a lot. You're not sure how long the dance lasts, an hour, a year. You could swear the stars trade places mid-ritual. Eventually, you collapse in the moss dizzy and grinning, and the Maenads cheer like you've passed some unspoken test. You're not just watching the myth anymore. You're inside it, and somewhere beyond the trees, something shifts. You sense it before you hear it. More footsteps, more laughter, something barreling toward the clearing that smells like sweat and wine and, well, looks like the satyrs have arrived. The arrival of the satyrs. There's a tremble in the ground, subtle rhythmic like someone drumming with their heels, and then the clearing practically inhales. The Maenads pause mid-step heads, tilting like wild deer catching a new scent. Then comes that unmistakable racket laughter shrieks, pipes playing something both off-key and somehow catchy. And then bursting out from the shadows and into the firelight come the satyrs. You're not ready. They're shorter than you'd expect, most of them barely shoulder height. But what they lack in height, they make up for in chaos. Goat legs, human torsos, scruffy beards, curly horns, and attitudes like frat bros who found their way into a forest rave and never left. They howl, cartwheel slam into one another, and immediately begin trying to dance with the Maenads, who alternately welcome and shove them away, depending on the satyr's approach. One of them, who introduces himself with a slurred, "Call me vine butt," tries to teach you a dance that involves kicking up dirt and braying like a donkey. You give it a solid try, and he rewards you with a wineskin the size of a baby goat. You sip. It tastes like blackberry lightning. You cough. He cheers. Here's a mainstream historical fact to keep you grounded. Satyrs were regular fixtures in Greek mythology and stage plays. In particular, they were associated with satyr plays, short comedic pieces performed after tragic trilogies during festivals like Dionysia. Think slapstick meets sacred mischief with lots of innuendo and goat puns. The satyrs here don't seem scripted. They're all improvisation, chasing one another through the underbrush, trying to impress the Maenads with backflips and exaggerated flute solos. One tries to juggle figs, fails miserably, and shrugs like he meant to drop them. And here's a weird fringe tidbit. In some old rural cult practices, people believed satyrs were real spirits of the land, manifestations of fertility panic. Yes, panic comes from Pan, and occasionally unexplainable forest laughter. There are even cave paintings in Arcadia that show human-animal hybrids dancing alongside vine-covered altars. As the night deepens, You watch this living mural of chaos and myth blend together. Dionysus reappears lifted by two monads and a satyr who's clearly had too much fermented honey. The god wears a crown of laurel now, and his eyes gleam with the thrill of it all. He doesn't need to speak. His presence is command enough. The satyrs in their odd reverence settle a bit, though one is now loudly insisting he can play the lyre with his toes. Monads lay out food that appeared from nowhere: roasted nuts, dripping cheeses, golden bread, and fruits that seem to shimmer with dew even under firelight. You're given a seat near the edge of the fire, beside a sleepy-looking satyr with a daisy tucked behind his ear. He mumbles, "Been following the god since he turned a whole wedding into a thunderstorm. Good party, bad cake." You nod like this is normal. Here's where the scholarly debate rolls in. Was this wild company meant to represent the dangers of letting instinct run rampant? Or was it a deliberate rejection of stifling control, a statement about the joy of surrendering to the unknown? Historians still argue whether Dionysian myths warned against madness or celebrated the parts of us that need to unravel now and then. You lean back on your elbows, watching the maenads and satyrs dance around the flames. One maenad rides on a satyr's back like a rodeo star. Another uses a snake as a scarf. No one questions anything. That's the magic of this space logic is on vacation. And then someone hands you a mask. It's simple painted clay, streaked with ivy green and wine purple. When you put it on, the world shifts. Colors brighten. Sounds stretch like honey. The fire dances in new patterns, and for a second, you swear you hear the stars whispering. You laugh low and quiet. So this is what myth feels like on the inside. For one night, just one, you're not you. You're part of something ancient and wild and completely irrational, and it feels oddly like home. A procession under moonlight. You don't remember falling asleep, but you must have. Because now you're waking not in a bed, of course, but in a field that smells like crushed thyme and damp earth, with your head resting on what feels suspiciously like a satyr's tail. He snores gently. There's a fig tucked into your palm, like a strange forest goodie bag. The clearing is quieter now, like a party that wound down without a hard stop. Maenads stretch languidly. A satyr plays a gentle, sleepy tune on a pan flute that seems to coax dew from the leaves. And Dionysus, he's already on the move. He walks, like he never tires, trailing garlands and silence. As he steps into a narrow forest path lit by pale moonlight, the others follow. No words, no shouts, just music and motion. And you do what you always do in myth when the god starts walking. You follow. This is the theasos, the sacred procession part, party part, pilgrimage part, cosmic inside joke. It's one of the god's favorite activities, and it's been described in dozens of ancient sources. A moving ritual, a dance that winds through valleys and hilltops and temple ruins, gathering followers and stories as it flows. The word theasos itself suggests both ritual and celebration structure and chaos. Very Dionysian. The procession slithers like a vine through the hills. Torches light themselves, or someone lights them, maybe one of the shadowy followers who appear from trees, with the eerie grace of dream people. There's laughter, but softer now, a deeper kind, like everyone knows they're going somewhere important. You walk past olive trees that bow ever so slightly, past a stream that bubbles with what might actually be diluted wine. One satyr insists it is and fills a gourd with it for research. You pause to notice a detail: all the masks are back. The maenads wear different faces now, some smiling, some weeping, some with wide, surprised eyes. They trade them wordlessly mid-step like stories, as if everyone needs to be someone else for a while. It's comforting in a weird way. Here's your historical anchor processions honoring Dionysus, were part of the Dionysia festivals in Athens, where masks and costumes were used to honor the god and blur the line between citizen and performer. The Great Dionysia, in particular, was where theater was born. Those ancient Greek tragedies and comedies, all performed in honor of this very god, with all actors masked. And now you're part of it. A quirky aside, one minor text from the Hellenistic period claims that during some secret Dionysian rites, the procession would lead to a giant cake shaped like a ship, which would be set afloat on a wine-colored lake. Real, who knows, but it sounds fantastic, doesn't it? As the group moves onward, things start to shimmer. Trees bend in impossible ways. Shadows detach from their objects and stroll off like they have their own agendas. You don't even question it anymore. The moon hangs impossibly large in the sky, like it's curious. Dionysus halts at a high ridge overlooking the sea. The air is still. The procession stops behind him like a curtain freezing mid-performance. A silence falls, not fearful, but expectant. He raises his arms. No words, just that. And something shifts. The sky doesn't crack open. The earth doesn't tremble. But you feel it in your chest, a ripple, like the world taking a deep breath. The god looks back at you, just for a second, and in that look is every contradiction you've ever felt: joy tangled with grief, madness laced with meaning, chaos wrapped in a perfect pattern too big for the eye to see. You understand nothing, and yet everything. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was ever meant to be taken seriously. Was he a comic relief god, a terrifying outsider, a symbol of social liberation, or barely restrained violence? You're starting to think he's all of those things at once, with extra glitter. Then slowly the procession turns and begins its descent, winding toward a forested coastline, glowing faintly with starlight. The torches stay lit. The satyrs sing a new tune, lower, sadder, still beautiful, like even they know this moment won't last. You follow lighter somehow, not because your feet are less tired, but because something inside you has unlatched, like a door swinging open in your ribs. You don't know where this path ends, but at this point, does it even matter? The god reveals his trick. You're back on the shoreline before you even realize you've descended. The moon rests on the water, like a pearl cracked open its light, splashing across waves in long, sleepy strokes. The last of the satyrs are curling up under trees, snoring already. The maenads, some are still dancing their bare feet, sketching spirals in the sand, their hair tangled with bits of bark and midnight. Dionysus stands at the water's edge, his robes damp, his ivy crown now glowing softly. He doesn't move, just watches the tide creep toward his toes like it's shy. You approach slowly, not sure if you're supposed to, but he speaks without turning. You've seen the revels, the dance, the wine, but you still think I'm just a party trick. You almost say no, of course not, but it would be a lie. A kind one, but still a lie. He chuckles softly. That's the problem. Mortals think I'm a joke, a festival, a hiccup in the order. But I am order in my way, just upside down. And with that, the transformation begins. Not fireworks, not light, just shifting. A little like watching a reflection ripple in the water. You blink. The god with the gentle eyes and half smile is no longer there. Before you stands a lion. Yes, a lion, gold-eyed, massive, calm, as still water, but with a hum beneath the surface like a distant drumbeat. It blinks once. You blink twice. Then the lion lifts its head, stretches, and melts again this time into a panther sleek and shadow black, prowling the edge of the water like it owns every grain of sand. Then it changes again. A bull now, not wild or angry regal, like it knows it was worshipped in Crete, sculpted into frescoes danced around by priests with blades shaped like moonlight. And finally, he's Dionysus again, barefoot, relaxed, holding a cup of wine that wasn't there before. Now do you see, he asks. This isn't new, of course. Myth after myth tells of Dionysus changing forms. When he was captured by pirates, he turned the mast to vines, made the deck sprout grapes, transformed into a lion, and drove them overboard. It's one of his oldest tricks, disarm with charm, then remind everyone he's a god. Here's the historical root. Many scholars think Dionysus absorbed the qualities of older foreign deities, Phrygian, Thracian, even Egyptian influences. That shape-shifting nature, it's baked into his identity. He is the god of in-betweens, of blurred boundaries, of transformation. But here's the fun fringe angle. One lesser-known version of the pirate myth says Dionysus didn't just scare the pirates. He gave them a choice leap into the sea or embrace his madness. Those who leapt became dolphins. Those who stayed, it's said they became his very first satyrs, doomed to dance and drink forever. Not the worst punishment, honestly. You sit by the god who now seems almost too human again, and sip from the cup he hands you. It tastes like the first time you were ever brave. He leans in a little. They'll say I'm two-faced. Joy and madness, celebration and death. But isn't that the truth of you too? Historians still argue whether Dionysus is meant to represent life's pleasures or its punishments. Is he a reward for letting go or a warning against too much freedom? You don't have an answer. But sitting next to him with the sea whispering and the stars eavesdropping, the question doesn't seem to matter. Because that's the trick, isn't it? He doesn't transform to deceive. He transforms to reveal. And maybe just, maybe so, do you. Dolphins from pirates. You're not sure how long you sit there. Time's gone syrupy again, thick, slow, sweet. But eventually Dionysus rises with a fluid, feline grace, brushing sand from his robe. He turns to you and says, almost conversationally, "Let's visit my dolphins." You blink. You're what? He just grins. Come on. So you follow him down a rocky path that hugs the coast, the waves lapping rhythmically beside you, like a half-asleep dog. It's quiet, almost too quiet, until far ahead the sea hiccups a splash, a series of chittering clicks, and then the unmistakable sound of laughter. Not human laughter, but close enough to make your brain tilt. You round a curve and stop. In the water below is a pod of dolphins, sleek, silvery, absolutely vibing. They leap in graceful arcs under the moonlight, weaving around each other, like they've been choreographed by Poseidon's weirdest nephew. But what catches your breath is their eyes. They look at you, and not in a cute marine mammal way. In a hey, remember that time we kidnapped a god way. Dionysus lounges on a tide-washed rock and gestures like he's unveiling a stage act. There they are, my former captors. Right. The pirate story. You've heard it before. Sailors picked up a beautiful stranger on some forgotten shore, thinking he was just another dreamy-looking guy with soft eyes and nice cheekbones. Bad move. They tried to kidnap him, maybe sell him into slavery. But things went wrong fast. The ship sprouted vines. Wine spilled from the planks. Ivy wrapped the sails. A lion, guess who appeared on deck? Panic, screaming, everyone overboard. Except they didn't drown, because Dionysus, in what might be the pettiest mercy in mythology, turned them into dolphins. Not to punish them, but to keep them useful. Helpful even. Now they escort ships, rescue sailors, and occasionally, if you believe the tales, sing sea shanties only the stars can understand. Here's your mainstream fact. Ancient Greeks genuinely believed dolphins were sacred. Killing one could be punished by death. They were associated not just with Dionysus, but with Apollo, Poseidon, even Artemis. Seeing a dolphin near your ship, automatic good omen. And here's the weirder bit one minor philosopher wrote. The dolphins are men returned to the sea for having committed crimes on land. That was probably metaphorical. Probably. But standing here watching these dolphins wink at you, like they know secrets you're not so sure. One dolphin swims close to shore. You swear it raises a fin in a mock salute. Dionysus tosses it a fig. It catches it mid-leap. You don't even question why the dolphin wants fruit. Why not just kill them, you ask softly. Dionysus tilts his head. Why waste potential they already knew how to sail? Now they help guide the lost. That hits somewhere deep. Historians still debate the meaning behind this myth. Some say it's a morality tale about hubris, don't mess with strangers, especially if they have divine bone structure. Others think it reflects the Dionysian paradox. Chaos leads to transformation, and punishment might be another kind of gift. Maybe those pirates were always meant to be dolphins. Maybe they were terrible people who found a better purpose with flippers and a sonar laugh. Or maybe Dionysus was just showing off. You sit beside him again, watching the former pirates frolic like it's their favorite eternity. They forgive you, Dionysus says casually. Who? He shrugs. Whoever you thought you disappointed. Whoever you think you wronged. They already moved on. Time you did too. You don't respond. He doesn't need you to. The sea glows, faintly now, as if morning is getting ready somewhere behind the horizon. The dolphins dive one by one, disappearing into deeper water. You'll forget some of this, he says, standing again. Figures, you mutter, but not all of it. You nod. He pats your shoulder, like a surprisingly chill camp counselor. There's one more stop, another shape-shifting. No, his smile is a little softer now. A promise. And with that you rise. The last of the dolphin songs echo behind you like a lullaby made of sea foam and second chances. The promise of the vine. You follow Dionysus up from the shore, the cool salt air giving way to the warm, earthy scent of a vineyard tucked in a quiet valley. The grapes hang heavy and purple like clusters of night itself, and the air buzzes softly with the hum of insects and the occasional flutter of wings. It's as if the vines themselves are breathing, pulsing with a secret rhythm you don't quite understand yet. Dionysus moves through the rows like a conductor, fingers brushing leaves and grape clusters coaxing life out of the soil. "This is where my power lives," he says quietly. "Not in wild madness or thunderous transformations, but here between root and fruit." You lean in, catching the faintest hint of fermenting sweetness on the breeze. There's a curious tenderness in the way the god tends the vines, a far cry from the riotous revelries you've been part of. It's grounding like an anchor in the swirling chaos. Here's a mainstream historical fact. The cultivation of grapes and the making of wine were central to ancient Greek culture, with Dionysus himself considered the god of the vine and the patron of viticulture. Wine wasn't just a drink, it was a symbol of civilization, community, and divine inspiration. The Greeks held festivals like the Anthesteria to honor the new wine and the god who made it possible. But here's a quirky bit. Some ancient writers suggested that Dionysus was once a mortal prince who traveled the world teaching people how to make wine before ascending to godhood. The lines between man, god, and myth blur just like the wine you sip from a goblet he hands you now, warm and full-bodied. The god's eyes meet yours sparkling with a mischievous light. Wine transforms, just like me. It can bring joy or madness or truth. Historians still argue whether the rituals around Dionysus celebrated freedom or chaos, or perhaps both. You take another sip, the flavors unfolding like a story on your tongue. You feel the pulse of the vineyard beneath your feet, the slow heartbeat of the earth. The promise here isn't just about indulgence. It's about transformation, about embracing the wild and the ordered in one breath. Dionysus gestures toward a gnarled old vine, its branches twisting upward like ancient fingers. This vine has stood through storms and droughts, much like the stories I carry. Each grape holds a secret, each harvest a memory. You think about the pirates, the satyrs, the maenads, and the shifting forms you've witnessed. The god's power isn't just in spectacle, it's in these quiet moments of growth and renewal. As the night deepens, the vineyard seems to glow softly under the stars, a living testament to resilience and change. You realize the transformation trick isn't just about dazzling displays. It's about the slow, steady magic of becoming. And maybe that's the most surprising trick of all. Wine's double-edged blessing. The vineyard's warmth fades as you and Dionysus move toward a small stone hut nestled among the vines. Inside, the air is thick with the sweet, fermenting scent of wine barrels and crushed grapes. The flicker of a lone oil lamp casts dancing shadows on rough walls lined with amphores, each one promising a different story or a different kind of madness. Dionysus gestures to a large ancient barrel. Wine is not just pleasure, it's a test. You raise an eyebrow. A test. He nods slowly, eyes gleaming in the dim light. One cup can loosen the tongue, open the heart. but too much can unravel a soul. That's why my worship is both feast and warning. Here's your mainstream fact. Ancient Greeks took wine very seriously. It was always diluted with water, often mixed at symposiums, where philosophical debates and storytelling flourished. Drinking straight wine, social faux pas or worse. It was about balance. But here's the fringe tidbit. Some scholars believe that the Bacchae, the frenzied female followers of Dionysus, might represent ancient ecstatic cults using wine and dance to induce altered states. Others suggest these rituals were a kind of early therapy, a way to confront inner chaos by externalizing it. Historians still argue whether these rites were dangerous madness or sacred liberation. Dionysus pours a modest cup for you, and one for himself. You clink them gently. Wine shows you yourself, he murmurs. The good, the wild, the broken. You take a sip and feel the warmth spread. Your eyelids grow heavy, the room tilts just so, and the line between dream and reality blurs. Suddenly, you're on a ship again, the salty breeze whipping through your hair. The pirates from before shout and scramble their forms, flickering between man and beast, dolphins, lions, satyrs, all dancing on the edge of madness. You realize the wine has brought their story back to life, a swirling reminder of the consequences of hubris and the power of transformation. Dionysus's voice breaks through the haze. The god's surprising trick isn't just about change, it's about acceptance. You don't survive Dionysus by fighting him. You survive by joining the dance. You close your eyes, feeling the pulse of the music, the taste of wine, the wildness and calm intertwined. Maybe you won't survive this night unscathed, but then again, maybe that's the point. The last dance and gentle fade. You're back where you started, under the vast night sky stars, sprinkling silver across the velvet black like spilled salt. The sounds of the vineyard and the sea have softened to a whisper, a lullaby woven from the memories of pirates, gods, and wine. Dionysus stands beside you, his form shifting one last time from man to a wreath of vines and blossoms, his laughter mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves. The transformation trick complete, he seems less a god and more a part of the night itself. You breathe in the cool air, feeling the soft hum of the earth beneath your feet. The stories you've heard settle deep inside you, like a warm, slow fire. The pirates who became dolphins, the wine that can both heal and unravel the god who dances between forms, all threads in a tapestry woven to soothe and stir. Here's a mainstream fact to carry with you. Ancient Greek myths were more than stories. They were teaching tools, reflections of human nature, and mirrors of the world's mysteries. Dionysus, with all his contradictions, reminds us that life is messy, beautiful, and ever-changing. And a quirky note. Some ancient playwrights claimed that Dionysus himself could only be truly understood through art, through tragedy, comedy, and song. So maybe this sleepy tale you've shared tonight is just one more thread in the endless dance. Historians still debate whether Dionysus represents freedom or chaos, or if, like all gods, he is a little bit of both. You feel your eyelids growing heavier now, the night wrapping you in its quiet embrace. The last image you hold is of the god's gentle smile, his eyes full of mischief and kindness inviting you to dream. As you drift, remember this transformation isn't something to fear. It's the very rhythm of existence, like the changing tide, the turning seasons, and the slow swirl of wine in a cup. It's constant, inevitable, and sometimes surprisingly kind. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night is softening now, the edges of your thoughts blurring like watercolor on damp paper. Your breath slows, sinking with the gentle rise and fall of a quiet sea. The stories you carried here, the pirates, the god's transformation, the wild dance of wine and life, are settling into the deepest corners of your mind like seeds beneath rich soil waiting for dawn. It's okay to feel a little lost in the magic. After all, myth is meant to be mysterious, a shimmering thread that pulls you gently toward dreams and deeper truths. Dionysus doesn't just show us change, he invites us to lean into it, to find the beauty in chaos and the calm in the wild. Tonight, as your eyes close and the world softens, imagine yourself as part of that endless dance, sometimes lion, sometimes vine, sometimes dolphin, always moving forward. The transformations you fear or dream about are just steps in a story that never truly ends. Breathe in that quiet promise. Let the softness of night carry you away, safe, curious, and ever becoming. Good night, traveler.